It's the Security Weekly News, live from the island of Elba. It's episode 370. Actually, we're not live and we're actually not on the island of Elba, but whatever. I'm, it's welcome to the week of 17 March 2024. We got sick jokes, WebGPU, Fortra, Azorult, a word I can't say, Fujitsu, Conversation Overflow, Phishing, Josh Marpet, and more on this edition of the Security Weekly News.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for the Security Weekly News.
Hi, folks. I'm Adrian Sanabria, the host of Enterprise Security Weekly. Every week, we interview the most interesting folks we can find talking about the most pressing cybersecurity issues and challenges facing the enterprise today. Myself and my co-hosts have each been in the industry for decades, long enough to see the patterns in the industry and explore where trends are going. In addition to enterprise challenges, we also follow the vendor space, the most interesting security startups emerging, technology and product trends, all of the most interesting funding and acquisition announcements. Finally, we love to discuss the latest trends in tech and how they'll impact cybersecurity. If you're wondering how the latest in AI, quantum computing, cloud, and DevOps is going to impact security a few years down the road, you should follow the Enterprise Security Weekly podcast.
Well, welcome to the island of Elba, which is what I'm calling my new location. It's an all-new show in my old office before my new office might be ready someday. So, as they say, the show must go on. I feel like Wolfman Jack at this point. I should be like in a van somewhere in Mexico broadcasting. But, if you don't get that joke, well, you can Google it. All right. Researchers at the Graz University of Technology and the University of Rennes published research that showed a remote attack on the GPU. Okay, when I saw that, I was like, wait, what? A remote attack on the GPU, which involved using WebGPU. So if you don't know, WebGPU is an API that allows a website to use the local GPU to carry out high performance work from the web browser. So, okay, that it does what it says it's supposed to do. But the attack is called a GPU cache side channel attack. So this is a new, I had not seen that term before, but it can basically be done remotely from within a browser using JavaScript. So if the web page uses JavaScript and WebGPU to then access the GPU so that calculations could be done in that process, then I guess you could do all kinds of stuff, right? So the example that they were talking about was that the victim is reading an article and that the same web page can then trigger the GPU. So it almost sounds like it could be a good thing, like assign your unused GPU cycles to, I don't know, saving humanity or something. But of course, then it could also be used to crypto mine. But the attack could be used to do, this was the problem that they were talking about. It could be used to do an inter-keystroke timing attack. And we've talked about that before, but that's basically where they're able to ascertain what you're typing from the timing of the keystrokes. I don't know how that works personally. Excuse me, but an AI apparently can somehow determine this. The other thing they said was it could also obtain GPU-based AES encryption keys by using the GPU to crack them in a few minutes, or it could do covert data exfiltration with the transmission rate of up to 10 kilobits. Okay. The researchers target 11 desktop graphics cards and browsers with WebGPU support, which includes Chrome, Chromium Edge, and Firefox Nightly. AMD published an advisory saying, quote, it does not believe that any exploit against AMD product is demonstrated by the researchers. Okay. Sorry. The researchers said they weren't aware of any other companies planning any action either. A small proof of concept is available that basically detects if you have web GPU and then it conducts a harmless attack if you're interested in running attacks on yourself or testing this further. So feel free to get to work. Fortra file catalyst. Do you know how many times I had to type Fortra to not type Fortran? I mean, like it was like automatic. I mean, it was like reaching for a cigarette. I mean, it took me years to stop reaching for cigarettes on top of the monitors. My wife was like, "What are you doing?" We shared an office for a while, and she said, "Every time you stop typing, you reach." And I was like, "What?" And I realized I was reaching for the ashtray on top of the monitor. Yeah, talk about habitual. But anyway, Fortra File Catalyst is a managed file transfer service, or an MFT. There's so many acronyms that are the same. And it has a vulnerability which could allow remote code execution and web shell deployment by an unauthenticated attacker. Eee. An advisory and full proof of concept was published on the 13th of March. Now, the flaw itself was found last August by LRQA Netitude, and Fortra patched several days later in one of those various security fixes patches that we see all the time. But now there's apparently a full proof of concept sitting out there, which means that this will begin being exploited because somebody wrote a proof of concept, shared it, and don't get me wrong, I don't think in any content or any context should we not publish proof of concepts. But I'm just saying, once they publish one, and any clown or very sophisticated clown or not a clown at all can download those proof of concepts and develop them, then you're going to get hosed. It's a 9.8 CVSS vulnerability, and it affects version of Fortra File Catalyst prior to version 5.1.6 build 114. And it basically is a directory traversal flaw that allows files to be uploaded to restricted locations. Oh my God. Because File Catalyst workflow public access login option is enabled by default. And guess what public access login option means? It means that somebody can call the FTP servlet without credentials. That's not good. Anonymous FTP for the win in 1999. I mean, I always did find a good directory traversal provided me with a whole lot of happiness, which is kind of sad, but it really did. I mean, just being able to go to good old /Etsy without them knowing it just makes me feel all warm inside, like a warm summer afternoon sitting on the grass in Central Park or watching two bums fight a rat over half a hot dog. Pepperidge Farm remembers. But, it gives you that warm fuzzies. But anywho, patch like your /Etsy depends on it because, well, it kind of does. And I don't really want you uploading fake password shadow files into my /Etsy directory with anonymous FTP, which sounds like an attack from 1999. I mean, it really does. Oh no, not this thing. Azorult. Azorult. I don't know how to say it. It sounds like a weird French death metal band or something. Azorult. No, more Norwegian, right? More Norwegian death metal than French death metal. What's the difference in French death metal and Norwegian death metal? I don't know. I'm sure somebody will be able to tell me. Azorult is an info stealer with a really hard to say name, but it has a new campaign that's being observed in the wild. Basically, and this ended up turning into a rant for me. The attacker creates fake Google Doc pages on Google Sites, which is a trusted domain, right? And they use HTML smuggling to download a malicious payload. And this was why it turned into a rant, because I immediately remembered that just yesterday, someone at a professional location where I have received training for anti-phishing and I'm required to attend said training over and over and over again. And, with all the other training, if Cindy and Bob are canoodling in the work closet, is this A, bad, B, okay, C, just bad because you weren't included? That kind of, those trainings. But literally, somebody at work yesterday sent me a link to an Excel spreadsheet, and they had in the email, click the link, and if you get a warning, go ahead and click OK. I was just beside myself. I mean, it took me a while to find out if this was a real link or it was a phishing attack or what. And we have got to stop, doing legit stuff like this and sending it out if we ever want to stop people from clicking illegal and illegitimate links. Because we spend $1 billion training our employees to not click links. I mean, I've been to the training every year, twice. I have to go to the training. Don't click it. Don't click it. Don't click it. Don't click it. Check the link, et cetera, et cetera. And then having a link that is to some unknown site and having our own official people sending out messages saying, no, click the link. And when the warning pops up, go ahead and ignore it. I'm like, really? The people that were working on my new office said, "Did you hurt yourself?" Because all the creative swearing that was coming their way. But anyway, Netscope Threat Labs explained this new attack in a blog post on the 15th, and they said that the Azorult info stealer payload basically, as the name implies, steals your info. But mostly it steals your credentials and your credit card information, and it uses some nice legit domain like Google Sites. Now, if you don't know what HTML smuggling is, it's basically a way to try and bypass download controls by, having the HTML downloading all kinds of things that are in chunks or blobs rather than being a file. And then once you get them downloaded, you have, JavaScript assemble them on the client side. Now they've already gotten past security, like in the airport where you can only bring 3 ounces of liquid through, but if 14 people bring 3 ounces each, then you have a 40 and a little bit more. Yeah. Then you got your very own 40 you can split with 14 people there at the gate. And that'll show them. But anyway, but you get the idea. Anyway, my point here is you ought to review your own policies and maybe review the kind of things going on in your organization, because this kind of fake download stuff's not going to go away. It just keeps getting more and more sophisticated. But if you're training people and you're telling them don't click links, and then you immediately turn around and send them stuff and say, click the link, and oh yeah, you're going to get a security warning, but you should click it anyway. Well, you might as well not have done the damn training. I mean, come on. Like, why do I have to sit through these stupid trainings 4 times a year and then you turn right around and break the rules? So let's get with the program, folks. And you should review your stuff too to make sure that's not going on in your organization, because that's going to get you in trouble. Speaking of which, as my crew installs a new Fujitsu wall unit in my new office, hey boys, Fujitsu issued an apology for exposing customer data following an investigation into malware that was found on the company's computers. Now, Fujitsu confirmed that a cyber incident did happen in a statement they issued on the 15th of March. Fujitsu said they had reported the incident to the Japanese regulators at the Personal Information Protection Commission. It's unclear, though, how long this data was being exposed, because they don't know when the malware was installed on their machines. And BlackFog CEO said that the incident highlights the needs for enterprises to engage in more proactive cybersecurity strategies rather than just saying, we'll defend against it, or sending out messages saying, just click it when it gives you a warning because, yeah, it's okay because it came from me. It must be okay. But his quote was, the reliance on defensive strategies is no longer sufficient, and all organizations must refocus on data security. As we've seen countless times, cyber criminals will always find a way, and once they have your data, there is no limit to what they can do to leverage it. Look, we need to be proactive. I completely agree. It's expensive. And when you go to management and they say, "Oh no, we have this new AI/ML enabled, anti-malware defender," and I just sent out a message from the CEO's office saying, "Please click the link, even if it says don't click the link, because it's okay." There's always going to be these clicks, right, that say baseball uniforms turn transparent in the rain. You won't believe what they saw next. No way that was real. Miley Cyrus wardrobe malfunction. No chance. Come on. But you get the idea. Think about it. Is there malware festering on Norm's greasy laptop down in the recovery division right now? Probably. Let's do better. I've done a bunch of response cases on stuff like that where the malware was in the system. Nobody knows how long, and it was like, how many people here were looking at porn in the last month? Everyone? Yeah. It was like everybody in the firehouse, right? Oops, I wasn't supposed to say firehouse. An unknown building somewhere. Speaking of finding a way, an attack called Conversation Overflow has been found, and it's an attempt to get phishing emails. What was I just talking about? It was an attempt to get phishing emails past AI and ML-enabled security platforms. Imagine that. It's almost as if I planned it that way. But basically, if you have AI and ML-enabled security, does anyone not have that at this point? At least according to marketing. I bought bread last night, and it said AI-enabled. And the warning on the back said may become Deadpool in certain circumstances. So, I can feel it working. Bread, mutated bread. Yay. Anyway, the emails can slip past the AI bouncer at the door by using hidden text, which looks like legitimate communication according to SlashNet. Now, AI/ML security doesn't always use traditional signature approaches. That was the whole point, right? You don't have to match the signature. The AI looks at the writing and goes, this doesn't sound good. And allegedly, it looks at all this behavior. Now, basically, the email that was sent has two distinct parts: a visible section, which prompts the recipient to click a link, bad stuff, but it has a concealed portion that the user can't see where they put a whole bunch of harmless text that it looks like a good communication to the AI. So the AI ignores the link, right? It's like putting buzzwords in white text on your resume. I mean, this is something they tell you to do right now, right? You put this in your resume in white so they can't see it. Although now when I get resumes, I want to open them, right, and turn all the text on so I can see what they typed. But this will supposedly get you past an AI screener. We heard this recently in a presentation that you take all the words from the ad and put them in white on your resume, and they're like meta tags, and it gets them past the AI screener. So even if you don't have 17 years of work experience, if you put that in white up at the top, 17 years of work experience, not a lie, don't know how that got there, but the AI reads it and goes, oh, they meet the criteria. Or, it's like paying your 14-year-old sister for some pee during a drug test that they're having at school. Oh, I don't think I meant to say that part out loud. Anyway, conversation overflow attack basically are a pretty clever idea that work for resumes too. It's not even a hack then, it's like a life hack. Phishing's big business, and I mean, it's really hard to stop. I guess like setting off the fire alarm 2 blocks away from the building you want to break into so that everybody's looking the other way. Meanwhile, SWAT's breaking down the door at the old studio where they think I am. Sorry, Eric. But, I'm actually here on the island of Elba, so I expect you to die, Mr. Bond. Yeah, that kind of thing. Speaking of which, attackers are apparently leveraging digital document publishing or DDP sites. Be really careful how you type that. I didn't know what a DDP site was, and I think I mistyped it. I got something very different. But on platforms like FlipSnack, Issuu, Mark, Publuu, Relay to, apparently a lot of these sites are like Samoan or something because they are Polynesian. They got a lot of double U's. Could be Finnish. I don't know. But anyway, I had never heard of these things before, but apparently they're using this to do phishing credential harvesting and session token theft. Now, if you aren't familiar with what a DDP site was, let me explain it so you don't Google the wrong thing. But these basically allow users to upload and share PDF files that are in flipbook format. Remember what a flipbook is? You probably don't. Flipbooks were like these little booklets you bought. Some of them were dirty. But, they had little animations and you flip through the pages and you see the little guy running along or the little guy doing something else, that kind of stuff. But you can add flip animations and other effects to your catalog, your brochure, your magazine. So you use this site, you go in there and get it. Now, apparently the attackers are using the free tier or no-cost trials to publish malicious documents to the site. So you think it's what you want, a flip book, and you actually download, malware. So basically, it's a legitimate site with some useful features, and you may be linking to something useful, or you may be linking to a credential harvester, which would make it about like every other sharing site in the whole world. I mean, I honestly didn't know what a DDP was, and I had to look it up. But in this particular attack, the DDP documents are a gateway to a link to another site, which acts legit, but is a fake site that has a Microsoft 365 landing page. And I mean, given how often these Microsoft 365 landing pages pop up on your screen, if you have like work accounts for that, I mean, mine does every day. It's like, yeah, people just type their creds and move on. Be careful out there. Don't type the wrong thing in a search. Wow. So this one blew me away. Front page above the fold in the Washington Post. If you don't know what above the fold means, you're not very old. But it was a Washington Post headline. Here's what it says in 46-point font. After years of ransomware attacks, healthcare defenses still fail. Wow. I couldn't believe it. I mean, it was the first time I ever saw like a security related headline that was on the very front page above the fold, like the main headline of the Washington Post. Not the tech section, not the metro section, but literally the front page. I mean, how about that? Well, the U.S. healthcare system is one of the most critical industries in the United States, and it's also one of the most vulnerable to attacks. But it's also one of the industries that has basically consistently failed to make improvements, which would limit attacks like the ones we have been seeing lately. I mean, I could literally do a story twice a week. I could do 4 stories that cover healthcare incidents. Now, in 2021, ransomware gangs attacked hospitals during the COVID pandemic and shut down some critical services and were causing people to be rerouted and things like that. And that caused a couple of deaths. I mean, it's pretty bad. But healthcare spends, they send a lot of money to Washington. They send lots of lobbyists and lots of people to Washington to fight any new security requirements on hospitals. And as such, the Congress and the industry move very, 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 very slowly, even for them. Because when somebody makes a $1 million campaign donation to my dark money pack that's going to let me go, hang out on the island of Elba for 6 weeks, um, I tend to, go, why don't we have some more hearings, gentlemen? Because I really do believe that it's going to take us a long time to consider carefully all the implications of this new security policy, which would require doctors to use passwords to log into patient accounts. I mean, this is an outrage. And then we stall this thing for 17 years. Now, according to article, the White House is actually looking for ways they can put laws into place to try and improve this. But the very power and rich healthcare lobby, note to friends elsewhere besides the United States healthcare industry is for profit. And as such, they don't focus as much on health as they do on making money for shareholders. And yes, I'm bitter about it. But the government is mostly afraid of the powerful healthcare lobby. Last year, more healthcare industry members reported ransomware to the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center than any other sector in the critical infrastructure. Experts did say, though, that the healthcare industry resisting mandatory security controls was only part of the problem, since the hospitals were also the most likely to pay. And if you're likely to pay ransoms, well, because in order to keep people from dying, they tend to pay the ransom. So they have more money and they're more likely to pay said money, and they have lousy security controls and they fight to keep security controls from being mandated. So I guess, we could target Mr. Fu's hospital and clinic, or we could target the bowling alley. Tough choice. So it's an interesting story. I mean, politics, death, money, body parts all over the place, hackers. Wow. I got to write a Netflix pilot. I think I'm going to get that off the ground. Well, it was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. It was the epic of belief. It was the epic of incredulity. It was the season of light. It was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope. And it was the winter of despair. But mostly, it was Josh Marpet. Hi, Josh.
Thank you for the most amazing introduction I think I've ever gotten in my entire life.
Happy to be of service.
Oh, and by the way, I mean, your hospital story is fantastic. You're right. You could do one twice a day, 3 times on Sunday. Let's be honest. It's ridiculous.
Absolutely.
And you didn't even tie that back to Optum. I was shocked you didn't tie it back to Change Healthcare. I mean, considering that they paid the $22 million ransom and then didn't get decrypted because the actual ransom the ransom receivers ran off with the money before giving their assistants.
Well, yeah. I'm like, does anybody ever get decrypted? I'm like, give me your money, and then I'm going to turn around and go, give me more money, and I'll maybe do it this time. Let's go for another round. I mean, I saw your CEO just got a $10 million bonus for losing $100 million last year. Let's go for another $10 million. Come on. Now, how much would you pay? And I'll throw in a free set of Gensu knives. And
in the old days, ransomware gangs had helplines. They literally had customer service lines to help you decrypt.
No, they do, yeah.
Now
I called one once. I called one. I wasn't even ransomware. I just called the number that they were publishing because I thought this should be interesting, and they were incredibly helpful. I mean, literally, we wrote a script, and I called them, and they were so helpful and nice. It was like, could United Airlines hire you guys to do their help desk? Because their help desk is really terrible. But, maybe you guys, it wasn't a bot. I got a real person. His name was John. Well, allegedly, his name was John. But
John, okay.
Spoke perfect English, was a very nice guy, was very helpful, offered to, set me up with all the, things I needed because I was like, I don't know how to pay this ransom. What is a Bytecoin? He's like, oh, let me help you with that. I can walk you through setting up a wallet and putting the money. I mean, it was incredible. It was like so much better than any of the help desks I usually call. I wanted to call them again just because it was so nice. Sometimes I just call John and chat for hours.
Therapist, there you go. So I wanted to continue the theme of what you were talking about, which was that honestly, it is so rampant and prevalent to have crime happen, to have things happen to our systems. And everybody goes, well, but it doesn't happen to mine. We're secure. First off, you're wrong. But second off, why? Why are you? Oh, we use Linux. That's nice. But there's acid pour and acid rain. Now, acid rain is the actual data wiping malware, and it destroys data, but it does it on Windows. Oh yeah, well, Windows understood. Like everybody knows that Windows sucks, security wise. And by the way, that's not true anymore. Microsoft has pumped billions of dollars into the security of Windows. The Defender is actually pretty impressively good. But the other part of it is that, they can recompile and port these things now. They do that. I mean, hell, you have Debian Linux inside of Windows under Windows Subsystem for Linux now. So it's actually not. And actually, didn't they just come out with SSH for? Didn't they just come out with SSH for Windows?
I think so.
Yeah. So sorry, but AcidPour, the variant of AcidRain, is a data wiping malware for x86 Linux. So you click a link on a Linux box, let's get Paul Asadorian, which is, the man of the year of the Linux desktop, and have him click a link. And guess what? It'll still take his machine out. So it doesn't matter what operating system you're running. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter what's happening. There are possibilities that things can go wrong. To be clear, taking precautions is good. It can absolutely help what you're doing. But taking precautions is not going to be enough. There's always going to be somebody, the old truism was that if somebody talented enough and skilled enough targets you, they're going to get you. All right. When I was at White Hat Security with Jeremiah Grossman, who, by the way, just became Grossman Ventures, congrats, guys. But he had this thing. He said there's targeted attackers. Sorry, there's a targeted and untargeted targets, and there's skilled and unskilled attackers. If it's an unskilled attacker and you're not being targeted, you're probably okay. There's skiddies. It's no big deal. But if it's a targeted attack, if it's a skilled attacker and you are a targeted company or targeted person, you might be in significant trouble. And I've worked on doing phishing campaigns, and let me tell you something. Everyone's like, I'll never get caught by a fish. You're wrong. So a friend of mine has this one deal that's fantastic. When you do a phishing campaign and you send out the phishing links and somebody hits reply all and goes, don't touch that. That's a phishing link. You hit reply all because you were the sender, so you get it back. You hit the reply all and go, you're absolutely right. Here's some links about phishing campaigns and what you can do to protect yourself against them. Guess what those links are? I mean, I'm just saying. So the point here is that AcidRain, which was used, by the way, in the Russian-Ukrainian war, was deployed against modems from a U.S. satellite company, Viasat. So now we're talking about not just Linux boxes. We're talking about embedded Linux boxes. We're talking about OT devices, operational technology. We're talking about ICS SCADA type stuff. Oh dear. This is a problem. I mean, how much work? There's been a lot of people that have done a lot of work with OT technology. The OT is, by the way, if you're not sure, it's what happens in chemical factories and plants and manufacturing companies. The OT stuff is the sensors, it's the CNC machine, it's the whatever that is mostly an embedded technology is what we used to call it in the old days, which, by the way, made much more sense to me. Okay, but anyway, I'm old. What can I say? But these data wiping malwares, these ransomwares, these whatever variant of malware it is, they're being ported to every single platform there is. You are not safe on Mac. You are not safe on Linux. You're not safe on Windows. You're not safe on OT. You're not safe on PLC. You're not safe. Sorry, guys. It is simply the fact that you're not safe anymore on whatever platform you choose to select. I mean, for God's sakes, I went to a presentation by H.D. Moore where he talked about hacking into the Mars rovers. Okay, he didn't do it, by the way. But it was because they were using a real-time operating system, and he found massive flaws in. He's like, if I had a way to get the transmissions to Mars, I would never do it, but I could hack the Mars rovers. I was like, oh, shyster. That's unbelievably not fun. So it's not so much about this specific malware, AcidPour, AcidRain. It is simply that you must be aware that you're not safe anywhere on the internet, anywhere on an endpoint, anywhere on anything. Okay? That's the kind of the concept that I wanted to get across here. And so that goes along with, Doug, with your healthcare point, that goes along with all the ransomware points, that goes along with all of the different pieces that you were talking about just a couple of minutes ago. Back to you, sir.
All right. Thank you, Josh. I agree with pretty much everything you said. Actually, all of it, I'm pretty sure, but you never know. Thanks, Josh. And finally, the whole obsession with getting back in the office is just getting out of hand, in my opinion. I mean, can't we just judge people by their work and not by where they are located? I mean, this is this old Mr. Burns kind of idea, Cratchit, be at your desk by 8 a.m. You don't leave until 5. If you do, we dock your pay. And, I mean, this whole concept that like your value of your work is just literally based on ticks of a clock, and are you seated in the right cubicle or not? I mean, really? I mean, so Michael Dell, the CEO of, Dell, once called, I mean, this was once called remote work, quote, the future of work. But suddenly, this perception is that those of us who would prefer to work here and skip the latest water cooler talk about this team or that, and the traffic and the parking and all that, would normally work during all that time we would spend driving. I mean, I do. But we're just all going to have to suck it up and get back in there because we're going to sit on the Long Island Expressway for 2 hours each way each day, listening to books on tape. Well, not on tape anymore, but I mean, Dell is the latest company that has started back down this road to try to force everybody to sit back in their cubicles for 8 hours a day without regard. So the recent trend is that in office work, the only good kind of work is in the office. That remote work, I guess, is of lesser quality. You can't learn from a video. You need a grizzled old professor covered in chalk dust wearing a mortarboard, or it's not school. So get in there and lecture the way it was always done, because in the 17th century it worked. Look at Sir Isaac Newton, because the old ways are the best way. And that's why I'm still worshiping Fortuna and Freya, But basically, Dell is telling remote employees that they will no longer be considered for promotions, and that if they want to qualify for promotions, they must go into work at the, quote, nearest approved office at least 3 days a week. I mean, otherwise you're a second-rate citizen. So, I mean, this seems to be the trend, though, right? I mean, I would love to work remotely completely. I get more done. My content is better. I can produce better video and on and on and on for my classes. But I guess it's back to the cubicle or the chalkboard for most of us. I mean, hey, Bill, have you heard the one about the two aliens who meet this rabbi walking down the West Side Highway? Whenever there was always one of those people, right? I always made up weird, surreal jokes, like there's two rabbits. They're both dead. Wait for laughs. And I always told that to the joke tellers. It seemed to work. They never told me jokes again. But from the island of Elba, that's the news. Thanks, Josh, and I will see you Friday on the Security Weekly News.